Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about SUI because we're actually seeing something that is a complete first for kind of the SUI ecosystem. SUI uses the language called Move, and this is a first time for the Move language, which obviously is what SUI is based on. So this is really, really important. We're going to go into that. We're also just going to take a quick look at kind of how SUI is doing. Obviously, SUI has probably been on the biggest downtrend that we've seen in probably about 6 months time. So I want to talk a little bit about that. What could this mean? Some of that type of stuff. We will also take a look at DeFi Llama just at the end of the video, get a quick update on kind of how the overall health of the SUI ecosystem is looking. So anyway, let's go ahead. We'll dive right in. Starting out with crypto bubbles, we can see on the day, things looking pretty green, a nice bounce in the market. Still red on the week though. Pretty red on the week overall. Obviously a couple big gainers here and there, but currently it's just the day is looking nice overall. So moving on, we can see we're actually still sitting in greed. A little bit surprising. It does feel like the market's pretty pessimistic for it still being in greed. However, I will say prices are pretty strong. So I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect between kind of price movement, maybe overall like sentiment if you're on X or Twitter or I guess I'm not on TikTok too much, but maybe it's on TikTok. Who knows? I don't know. But it seems like I think this is kind of mimicking or mirroring price more than a social sentiment, which obviously makes sense. This is more of like a technical metric. Moving on though to the SUI chart, if we do take a quick look, we can see a little bit of what I was talking about. Basically been on a downtrend since like the 18th of January, almost down only. We could even say we've been on a downtrend since like the 4th of January. So almost the entire month we've kind of just been moving down and almost down only. I guess here we saw a little bit of volatility, but not necessarily great. And like I said, this is probably the longest period of time that we've seen for SUI where it's been moving downwards. I mean, the last time was probably back here in like the March of 2024 where we saw this kind of months long run to the downside, and then obviously we saw this ridiculous months long run to the upside, but we have since broken that trend. We have come down. We kind of found potentially a little bit of support in this liquidity zone. I don't want to say we found too much support. I do think it's possible that we could continue heading to the downside, just because if you do look here, we're kind of pushing the bottom of the Bollinger Bands. We have kind of started to move up a little bit, but I do think if we start to move down, we can see that there is this kind of major level of support here, looking at the like 1618 Fibonacci extension level. So what we can always tell is with these Fibonacci extension levels, these are kind of what we can consider major points of support or resistance. If we look, we basically take the previous swing high, we go all the way down to the swing low, and then it gives us points that are supposed to be kind of higher levels of support or resistance. And as we can see on the SUI chart, it actually holds up, I would say, relatively well. We can see here, a pretty decent level of support and resistance, likewise here, and then here obviously is a very, very strong point of resistance that we've seen multiple different times. So, I think that the fib levels have held up pretty well here. And so I do think, we'll probably either hold and potentially we've already seen our bottom because we have overextended to the downside on the Bollinger Band several different times. So maybe potentially we've seen a bottom, or I could see that we potentially retrace all the way back to this 1618 fib level, which would put us at about $3.25. So I do think that is a possibility. Do I know that for sure? Obviously not. None of us ever really know what's going to happen for sure in the market. So this could be a situation where, potentially we enter either just do a spot buy right here so we don't have the risk of liquidation, or maybe a super, super, super low leverage long, like I'm talking maybe 2 or 3x. And then we look to play a little bit of this return to the downside here. Obviously, if you flipped bearish, then maybe this bounce could be a point for you to enter in on a short and potentially play this move to the downside and potentially even further, depending on kind of what your view for SUI in the longer term is. Right now, though, I still do think we are going to see a pretty successful year for crypto overall. Could be right, could be wrong. Obviously, none of what I say is financial advice. These are just my opinions based on what I can see on the charts. Charts are never 100% accurate, of course, and so it's very hard to say with 100% certainty what is going to happen, right? And so I can just tell you what seems to be possible, and of course there's going to be multiple different possibilities, always out there at once, right? And so as I've mentioned, maybe this was the bottom. We'll see a really, really strong move back to the upside. Potentially we kind of struggle around here in this liquidity zone. As you can see, we have kind of been in and around this liquidity zone over the past couple of days. Or maybe we do come back and bounce off this 1618 level down here at about the $3.25. We can see on the RSI, we did come down, did not at any point get to oversold, but we got into like the low 30s. So getting close to oversold, but not quite there yet, which is why I do think it remains a possibility that we could come back down to the downside. As we can see, we have seen kind of an overall descending trend to the downside from SUI basically ever since we saw this initial run to the upside here, topping in about the 16th of November. This is when it was like most overbought. I guess it was really overbought here as well, but this is kind of when it was like the most recent time it was most overbought. And since then, it's kind of been a descending trend down here for RSI. And one thing that is like comparatively pretty bullish, I would say, is if we look here, we can see that SUI was about 82 to 83 on the RSI, and it was at this candle. So we can see obviously this candle wicked up to about $3.94. So this was a lower price, and RSI was at 83, and now we're sitting at RSI being about 43. Again, not oversold, but kind of in the weak to neutral territory. And we're at a similar price, right? And so I think this is pretty good in the sense that obviously price strength isn't great right now, but by all measures, it looks to me like prices is probably somewhat overextended to the downside. So we could see, potentially a return to, maybe even this like mid fours range. Ideally, maybe we see upper 4s to 5s. And obviously even better than that, breaks of new all-time highs and move up maybe even to this like 3618 extension level, which would put us about $6.70. And then the 4236 would be about $7.77. So that's about what we're looking at for the SUI chart. If you are interested in trading SUI, Bitcoin, Ethereum, anything like that for that matter, feel free to use my link in the description below. I do have that link to BTCC. They are still doing the 10% bonus on first-time deposits. It's a super great deal, not a very common deal. So if this is something that you are interested in, I would say I highly recommend it. Also, extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user. So again, BTCC throwing a whole bunch of money at you to trade, which is always a good thing. And then also no VPN or KYC necessary if that's something that's important to you. So like I said, in the description below if you are interested in trading. Now, moving on, I want to show you the really big news that we've seen here. It's that the SUI is actually being added to Phantom. Currently, it's only in beta, which is obviously not a big deal, but this is the first move programming language that is being added to Phantom. So this is a pretty big deal. Obviously, SUI is kind of the only major chain, I guess you could say, that is programmed on Move right now. But this is very, very, very big news because Phantom, I'd say, is a really, really great wallet. Usually when you're seeing some of these abstract chains that people aren't really super familiar with, in particularly when you're not able to be covered by Phantom, MetaMask, Rabby, I don't know, some of the other really big players, that's when you can really struggle on adoption, right? And so the fact that SUI is actually being added to Phantom is really, really good news. And I actually do think we potentially see, when we start to see it, probably not before, but when we start to see another run to the upside for SUI, which I do think is in the cards, then I think we will start to see the adoption into SUI be far more vast, I guess we should say, because now it's that much easier to get into SUI, right? This is kind of always what kind of the play is the easier and the less obstacles to get into a new ecosystem, the better it is, right? And so I think having Phantom allowing SUI or kind of building SUI into their network, really, really, really good idea for SUI and obviously probably for Phantom as well. I'm sure Phantom will be a beneficiary of a lot of different trading fees and whatnot as part of carrying SUI. So really, really interesting news there. If we do look at DeFi Llama on SUI, we can see kind of some mixed information here. So stablecoins, TVL, and volume are kind of the three big ones that matter. We'll start with the good news. And we can see on stablecoins, things still looking to continue to trend upwards, which is really good. We can see just shy of $500 million on stablecoins on SUI. Pretty good over there. However, if we go back to volume and TVL, we're going to see some, I would say, generally less encouraging news. Obviously, volume on SUI is still really, really strong, but we are starting to see a little bit of a move back, probably kind of akin to what we saw in this range between kind of the late November to early December. We did see a pretty decent pullback on volume here, and then obviously we saw another high being made. We did not actually get to see another high being made here, but obviously the volume did come back to pretty serious amounts here. So that's good to see, but we are starting to see the volume trail off, which a little bit concerning, not obviously super concerning, but a little bit concerning. And now that Phantom has been added, or that Sui has been added to Phantom as an option, I do think we could see volume and volatility and all that type of stuff coming back to the Sui network in droves when we start to see price moving up again. Again, usually people like to buy when prices are up, not when prices are down. So I do think that we will see volume come back when prices kind of start to flip and move the other direction. Now TVL, we can also see something similar as well. We kind of just peaked barely over 2 billion here in early January. Since then, it has been a little bit of a move to the downside. Again, a lot of this can be kind of primarily driven by the price of their coin, just because a lot of the TVL on the chain is probably their coin itself. So this is not necessarily too big of a deal overall, but it is something just to keep an eye on. We are still sitting back at kind of where we were seeing in early to mid December. So again, like I said, not a huge deal overall there. So anyway, that's kind of what we got as an update for Sui today. Hopefully you did find the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe, because it really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, just let me know in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a really great way to do so. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.